Hey, what's up, guys? Well, better late than never, I guess. I was up in the wilderness for a bunch of weeks this summer doing those survival courses, and then I took the kids camping for a week, so I haven't really had a chance to go over the last episode of season 7 of Alone yet, but now I did. I actually uh, took the time and watched it and took a bunch of notes a couple weeks ago, and then predictably lost my notes. So I redid them this morning, rewatched it. Good episode anyway. Anyway, I figured I'd share you my thoughts on the finale and on how it went and all that. Well, first off, the show. Well, I think it starts with Callie, but I'll just talk kind of in order here. Watch out, there's spoilers. So if you haven't seen season 7, there's obviously spoilers in here. First, it shows Kai. The first time they show Kai, she's out ice fishing, and awesomely enough, kind of like last episode, she lands a little big old lake trout through her ice hole. And one thing about Kai on the show that's pretty cool is she shows the joy of, kind of wears her emotions on her sleeve, and that way you can see her joy really well, which is, like when I got the moose, or sure when Roland got the muskox, and any of those little successes, when you get a porcupine or a fish or whatever it is, you get so excited out there. It's you almost can't recreate the feeling of when you're really depending on it and you have some success. It's the like kind of the best dopamine rush you can get. It's the most joy you can get almost. I don't think I could recreate it with any amount of money, as far as you couldn't buy a new anything to be almost give you the same joy that you do when like when I pulled that fish out of the water and I had that in my net, or just those little successes. And Kai does a great job of showing and expressing that joy, so that's really cool. Good for her on that one. Of course, she also misses some fish, and that's kind of the difference maker between her lasting the whole time and not. I think if she would have just caught a couple more fish, she would have stuck it out. She was darn near being able to, and I think just a little bit of encouragement, of a little bit more success probably would have given her the boost. I imagine if she would have caught even one more fish, it would have given her another, 4 or 5 days, and then once by the time you're at 85 days, it's like, man, I could push through. It's just too bad. It's too bad a few of them escaped, and it's hard sometimes pulling them through those ice holes, because they'll definitely break off, especially those big fish. So anyway, did a awesome job. One of the few people to catch fish through the ice. So good for her on that. You can see later, like in a different time, it shows her, and her feet are real cold, and she's trying to warm them by the fire. And it kind of brings up an interesting discussion that I was thinking about too, where it's kind of, do you, even with a warm shelter, even with your feet right next to a fire or a hot rock in your sleeping bag, if your body doesn't have enough calories, it can't really keep warm. So I personally am a big fan of the get calories to stay warm strategy, as opposed to really spending tons of time on your shelter. Of course, you want your shelter to be sealed above all things. You don't want any leaks or air coming in. But you kind of need calories to create that body heat, because even without the calories, you probably sit in your house and freeze. I don't know. But I think it's an interesting discussion to be had. Of course, best of both worlds is to have both, but sometimes in a survival situation, you kind of have to weigh it out and see what your priorities are. And I think that's just kind of an interesting discussion to have. Anyway, you can see as Kai goes on, she then starts to miss a couple fish and is discouraged by that, and eventually probably counts it out and realizes between her feet just freezing and just not quite getting enough food to stay, she decides to call it a wrap. And good for her, she takes a little walk on her awesome snowshoes, and I don't know, what can you say? Good for her. She outlasted almost everyone that's gone up to the Arctic and has nothing, but something to be proud of. So good for her. I recommend you guys look up her and her husband's company, Lure of the North. They do really cool expeditions in the winter that you could join and learn that winter living can actually be pretty enjoyable. You don't have to be miserable and freezing and this and that. So they also sell cool winter gear that actually works. If I would have had a pair of their boots, probably would have done better. I didn't have, again, on my season, didn't have enough time to get my reindeer boots shipped from Russia, so I just had to buy some they were Baffin boots, supposedly negative 140, but they just didn't cut it the same way that my reindeer boots would have done. Or like you can get like these mucklucks from Lure of the North and stuff. They're just a lot warmer. Anyway, on the final interesting note with Kai is, it turns out it was just a couple months after she got off the show, I went up there and did co-teach with her a survival course in northern Ontario, and she was, strong as could be, so she recovered quickly, which means it goes to show she didn't push her body too far where she did permanent damage or anything, so that's probably wise of her. And anyway, good stuff. The next show, I guess at the start of the episode, starts with Callie again looking at her porcupine, wondering if she should eat it. And like in general, you probably wouldn't eat that, but fact is, in a situation like that, it kind of makes it situational. You gotta make the call, and it's hard to know what you would do until you really are there. But I'd probably do the same that she did, just cook the heck out of it and eat it, because for her at this point, it's really coming down to it. That can be the difference between making it and not making it, is that porcupine. So she goes ahead and eats it. Good for her. Looks like she did just fine eating it. So she tested her theory and came out on the right side. So that's good. I think the next time it shows her, she's doing a fashion show. Oh yeah, shout out. That was pretty hilarious. Here she is, 80-something days in, still pulling off fashion shows, and with her rabbit fur vest, which goes to show how many rabbits she's catching, and she's got a fancy old button on her vest just to try to outdo me. That was pretty funny to watch, and good for her. She had the button for her rabbit fur vest was rabbit's foot. Interestingly enough, I used all my rabbit's feet as toilet paper out there. I didn't know what else to do with them. They make great toilet paper. It was kind of funny when my wife showed up. I had a whole birch bark roll of probably 20 rabbit's feet in there. She said, "What is that?" So I explained to her. But anyway, that was pretty funny. Thanks for the shout out there, Callie, during the show. And then it shows her pulling a porcupine quill out of her back, that sucks, man. Those things can really get in there. But she's tough, and she's got as good of an attitude as you can have, and manages to pull it out. So well done. But the rough thing is it shows her, she takes off her boots and starts complaining about cold feet, and sure enough has a little frostbite on her toe. Oh, and it's crazy up there in the north. It's like those little small things can make all the difference in the world, and it's part, somewhat of a shame. It's like you can have Callie's got the ingenuity and the outlook and putting in the effort and everything to just succeed out there, and then it's just she hasn't spent a ton of time in the north, so there's a bit of a learning curve on certain things, and there it is, just like your foot got too cold at some point, and now she's got frostbite, and it's darn near impossible to keep your feet warm enough to prevent it from continuing, especially when you have to get out and still provide calories. Uh, so yeah, foot care is super important. That's an important thing to keep in mind. I know when I was uh, ever felt cold at all, I would just stop what I was doing, go in, take my socks off, dry them all out with hot rocks. I spent hours every day doing that. It was super frustrating, but you kind of have to do it. So, oh, it's a bummer to see her toe, getting frostbit. And then she goes out and does a lot of fishing, and she's really putting in the effort. I wish she could stay out there longer, but of course that foot, it just starts getting cold, and you kind of have to go back in and warm it up. It's pretty lame. Uh, but she has the perfect mental outlook. She's staying positive and just doing what she has to do. I mean, you can just imagine just catching one fish would just push her over the edge and to where she could relax in her shelter and keep her foot warm for the last 10 days or so. So too bad. I was really hoping she would land one there. But she does catch some more rabbits. I can imagine going by her vest and by her time out there, she's caught a lot of rabbits. They definitely don't show them all. I know. I'm sure she caught more than I did. I caught 27 rabbits, I think, in the first 20 days. Before I got my moose, and then I basically took my snares down because I knew I wouldn't need protein anymore, and that's mostly what rabbits are. So she's been hammering some rabbits and gets another one there at the end. Man, and I'm really pulling for her, but then they come out, do the med check, and say she's got to go home. I think all of us watching can't help but think, really? Give her another, 10 days out there. She'd tough it out if she wants. But of course, they're trying not to do any permanent damage to you. It's hard with that. That end is right there. It's you're almost like, let me make the sacrifices necessary to get there, but at the same time they don't want to do any permanent damage, so they make the call to pull her out, and again displaying her awesome attitude. She's not really mad. Of course she's disappointed, but she immediately understands what they're doing, and just what an awesome lady, what a cool outlook. And so she's at least winning in life. If you have a mental outlook like that, she's got a lot to share with others in the world, and did an awesome job on the show. And I'm glad she got a chance to display all that. So good on you, Callie. Hopefully we meet up soon, do some courses together or something. Look at that. There's a bunch of turkeys walking right over there. They're almost in bow range. You want to see? Look at those clowns. Anyway, let's see if I get this set back up. Ooh, how did I have it? All right. Anyway, so then to Roland. He comes first into the show by clubbing a porcupine, and everything he's getting is really valuable too. You'd think the muskox would be plenty, but unlike a moose, which had tons of fat on it, relatively. A muskox is fairly dry. My brother on Alone the Beast, episode 2, had a muskox, and same thing, they were shocked with how little fat was on that thing. So I know Roland didn't have a ton of fat on his muskox, so he still needed to be really productive, and there you gets this porcupine, which are fatty little animals, and it definitely could have been a difference maker. I think he probably could have made it without it, but you never know. You just never know how on the edge you are. And then although it's funny enough, the last porcupine I got was with Kai on that winter course I was telling you about. There's a little porcupine running around, and I shot it with my recurve, stuck a bunch of arrows into it. They were wooden arrows, and then the thing crawled into this cave, rock thing, and just snapped all the arrows off, crawling into this hole. It was pretty impressive. Tough little animals. We ended up, of course, getting it, but that was the last porcupine I got. Just reminded me of that, interestingly, with Kai. Then, it shows Roland just struggling with, like going through life up there, which is always a bit of a struggle to one degree or another. But he just getting water on his crazy choppy shore. A lot of people think, well, why wouldn't you just melt snow or something? But melting snow, especially that dry northern snow, is a disaster as far as ways of getting water. So it's just a risk he's got to take. Get out there and get splashed a little bit. Looks like next he's got goes to his little meat cache and pulls out a little chunk of meat the mice are nibbling on. And there's another interesting discussion is the meat cache. His is awesome, that little refrigerator cube he built. And I had the raised cache, obviously, that got raided by the Wolverine. Now, the interesting thing is, and what you'd probably want to do long run, is a combination of both. We did, and so the Evenki would actually build a cache, a raised cache like I had, but then they would put something more like what Roland had on the top of it. And then there you go. Then you're safe from Wolverines and bears and everything. Of course, on the show, you're making all these calculations as what's worthwhile and not worthwhile, calorie, expenditures, and sometimes you live and learn a little bit on that. I think the combo for like permanent, proper storage, go Evenki style with the combo between what I had and what Roland had. Most of the bears are hibernating now for Roland, but of course that wouldn't be bear proof in if bears were around. So in long term, that would be sweet. And then your mice don't get in there, bears don't get in there, Wolverines don't get in there. It's just that's the ultimate answer if you have the time and calories to put into it. In hindsight, I probably would have, but hindsight's 20/20. So let's see. And then you see them out listening to the ice, and that's one cool thing out there. In Siberia, same thing. But when the ice freezes up, those sounds, all the sounds of the ice just cracking and shifting under you. It's not dangerous. It's just, something has to give when that much, with that much weight and movement and freezing of all the stuff. But up there with the northern lights above you and those sounds below you, it's pretty surreal experience. Pretty awesome what nature can display. And then you see him breaking his gear out about the same time I did on the show. I think I pulled out my parka on basically what was the last day when I went out and checked my net, for ice fishing. I pulled out my parka and would ice fish in it. But other than that, I didn't really need it. I was doing what Roland was thinking of doing, which is Of course, they had an end date, so he had to get to 100 days. I was picturing, and I think they're here in December now. Uh, and I was picturing on my season that I would have to get through January to win. I really figured that because, uh, well, what they're already experiencing now, and you see Roland talking about it a lot, is that those deep winters are rough. You're like almost in hibernation mode. It's dark all the time. You're just trying to, there's not a lot you can do productively because the days are so short. So I knew that that boredom and that cold would probably chase anyone away, even if they also had gotten big game or a lot of fish, which was what I was assuming someone else did. So I never thought the show would end before 120 days on my season, and a worst case scenario like 140, but that was always my goal. And a lot of the turkeys. Hey. Oops, I'm missing with the camera, sorry. Look at that, look at these little guys. Right, food. Anyway, they might be cutting across the background there. Up here. Or up here, I'm reversed. There you go. Pretty cool. Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, just the cold and what I was expecting. So a lot of the fat concerns you hear on my season was me assuming that, and I think I've discussed this elsewhere before if you watch some of my stuff, but it was thinking that the show was going to go 120, 140 days. I think I definitely had enough as it was to make it 120, but when I started to think 140, then I think I was running low on fat. I still had a couple 100 pounds of moose meat and all the marrow related, and probably 4 or 5 pounds of rendered lard, and 5 fish that totaled 60 pounds for the wolverines and stuff. So that would all gotten me easily to a day 100 or so. 100, I'm sure more than that, but I'm not trying to be conservative. And then I still was 160, 5, 8 pounds or whatever I was. So I still had 30 pounds to give. So that would have gotten me, I'm sure I would have been fine, but I was nervous about it because in our situation, you just didn't know when the show would end. That's a nice thing here. They know what they have to get to, so they can kind of calculate out their food and see if you make it. It doesn't make it any easier to get to day 100 and I guess you can eat more food to get there, knowing you don't have to make it beyond. But acquiring that food is no easier. And Roland has done a great job of it, and he knows how to use everything that he gets to the max. So good for him. He broke out his gear though, his parka. That's what we started with, and his sweet bear fur mitts and wolf hoodie thing. I like it, and then you see him just toughing it out for the last bit. He digs into the stomach contents of the muskox to get him a little farther. He also seems to be having, you're there. There's a lot of hours to sit in your shelter. It's pretty rough, pretty boring, but he's got that end point in sight, and you just got to do it. You can, like I think he says in some preview, you can't quit when $1 million is on the line. If you have the food to make it, you're just not gonna stop. So he has the food, but he also has a lot of time to think, and it seems like he's thinking about a lot of important things about what his priorities are with his family and building relationships and stuff. So that's good. Hopefully he's able to carry that through after the show, and and he basically makes it. He makes it, and his sister shows up. It's awesome. Congratulations, Roland. He definitely deserved it. He I even see he had a little marrow left that he saved to share with his sister. And I noticed that sometimes they make it. Sometimes it might seem like you don't have as much food as you do, and he was definitely scraping the bottom of the barrel, but he also wasn't so desperate that he had to eat every last bit he had to make it there. He still seemed pretty healthy as far as his body weight, and he had some bone marrow. Same my situation. If you watched, you'd think, oh, he just barely made it. But then, like I described earlier, there was a lot of food. So I'm not sure where Roland is, honestly. He might have had a lot of food left, could have lasted a lot longer. Uh, that was my situation. It kind of seemed different as you watched, but anyway, that's just that. Whatever it was, he made 100 days, earned it, and had more to give. So, well, good for him. Hope to meet up with him sometime. That'd be fun. Feel like we'd have a good chat. Everybody's trying to get us to be like Roland versus Jordan, but I'm more interested in just meeting a dude and sharing common experiences and stuff. So that'd be cool. Anyway, other thoughts were, I guess, that I jotted down were just when that serious cold hits, it really does limit your activity, and those are tough times. It goes by easily on the camera, but those are long, dark days, and they're cold, and that boredom, if you let it, can really catch up to you. I think, yeah, I think especially with the undefined end, because you're never sure if you're doing it in vain or not. But also the margin of error is really small, so you think about that with like Callie's foot. It's just such a simple little thing to have happen, and part of that is, that was her first time in the far north, it is a big advantage to have spent time up there, but where, in a similar location like Roland has, or like I did, because you learn lessons when the hard way yourself, but at least it wasn't during the show. So I'd also, when I was younger, out in Siberia, walking through the snow, I was trying to get back to look at where the trap lines were, to kind of orient myself. So I walked back into what was the frozen river to kind of look at these valleys and these two mountains. Sure enough, it's a river, so there's moving current underneath, and I was paying attention to the shoreline, trying to figure out where I was. Stepped through even though most of the ice is many feet thick, there's a little undercurrent pushing up. Stepped through the ice, froze, soaked my leg, and then out here I was miles from anywhere with a wet leg, and then you gotta try to get back and warm it up. It was pretty miserable, but those are like little lessons you learn the hard way, that it just shows how little the margin of error is in some of those, in those northern regions, especially come deep cold. Other thoughts on the show would be like, I think it's getting shown that big game is the way to really find sustainability. I hope they keep putting the show in places that have big game, because that's really what you ultimately want to go for. You can also find sustainability fishing, but it just depends, on the resources in the area. So it'll be interesting. One thing I like again about it is when people are out running after big game and big game is allowed to be caught, it just changes the whole thought process and strategy for everyone else. You kind of have to be more active and have to produce, which is more like what our ancestors had to go through. They couldn't sit there, they had to produce. And that was something I noticed with the moose. When I got the moose, you get the moose, but then you can't be satisfied with that, because especially imagine if you had a family or something to feed. It's not an infinite amount of food, so it basically buys you 3 or 4 months to get another moose or get a bear or get something. So the pressure's always on, and I feel like with these places that have a lot of, that have at least potential for game, it makes that more realistic. And we'll see. Like I've talked about, I like the mix up. Try the 100-day thing out for $1 million. That's cool, but I kind of hope they go back to the old format, because psychologically it's a whole different ball game as far as just not knowing when the end is. It's kind of an interesting, but I think relevant thing to have to wrestle with when you're out there. So we'll see what they do. I'm looking forward to next season, and to Kai and Callie and Roland and all the other contestants. You guys did awesome. This was a great season to watch, and well done. Hopefully we all can meet up at some point. Anyway, cheers.